Hey, welcome back, everybody. Good Sunday. Hopefully, we had a wonderful week, and hopefully, we're having a wonderful kind of end of the weekend here. And unfortunately, things are really picking up in the tropics here, with now very likely development in the Gulf of Mexico, potentially to hurricane status, and impacts could be coming as soon as the middle of this week. So, we've been talking about this big lull that we've had, almost a historical lull, and how quiet it's been during the past couple of weeks during kind of this more active time of hurricane season. But unfortunately, that lull in activity is starting to catch up to us. Again, area of development in the Gulf, very likely. That one I am concerned about for potential impacts. And then two other areas out into the Atlantic that could also develop potentially into hurricanes as well, but just more question marks on the future track of those. So we're going to dive into all of it today. I'm going to break it down for you, give you the latest information. Now, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, here to give you the latest information on what we're seeing out there in the tropics as well as back home. And luckily, things have calmed down a little bit through the lower 48 for now. But again, what's happening in the tropics is eventually going to change our weather here back home. So again, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely do so by hitting that subscribe button. Hit the bell for the latest notifications. Like the video and comment. Let me know where you're watching from and kind of what you're seeing in your area. Currently in Charlotte right now where I'm recording. It's kind of nice outside. It's really nice after that cold front worked on through yesterday. Had some great college football with some nice fall-like weather. So again, definitely some good news there. Also, first NFL Sunday of the year, so a perfect time for that cold front and that chillier air. With that said, though, again, we do have a good bit to discuss today, so let's go ahead and jump on into it and start talking here. So we'll start by just taking a quick overview of the Atlantic. I'm not going to spend too much time on this map because we're going to dive in segment by segment here, but just to kind of circle the main areas we're watching. This is the area in the Gulf we're watching. That's kind of the main area of concern right now. That's our number one priority. But behind it, we also have two other areas in the Atlantic that could potentially try to develop here through the coming days and through the next week or so. So again, peak of hurricane season is basically right now. This kind of week that we're in right now into this coming week is climatologically the peak of hurricane season, and we are seeing things tick up here. But I caution you, hurricane season can go all the way through October, sometimes even into the first half of November. We've seen some tropical systems bring impacts to the United States. So the season is far from over, so just, do not let your guard down and keep an eye, to whatever outlet you get for the weather, whether that's me or somebody else. Again, I just want you to have a way to stay informed here as things are picking up. So again, those are the three main areas, all three of which looking relatively healthy, especially that area in the Gulf, which again, we're going to zoom in on here in just a moment. But the latest from the National Hurricane Center, this came out just this morning. This area in the Gulf now up to a 90% chance of developing within the next within the next 7 days, and an 80% chance of developing within the next 2 days. So again, this is the highest likelihood we've had of development since Ernesto. And remember, Ernesto did develop. This one, again, will likely take the name Francine into the coming days. And honestly, this could happen as soon as today. It could happen tomorrow, I think is a very real possibility. And again, impacts from this are only probably 3 or 4 days away. We could see landfall as early as Wednesday night, depending on the track of this system. And again, it's Sunday now. So things moving pretty quick here with this area in the Gulf. Behind it, though, another area here with a 60% chance of development in the next 7 days and a 40% chance within the next 48 hours. So sorry, couldn't get my time out there. But again, that one has a chance to develop. Another area behind it with a 50% chance of development within the next 7 days. So again, we've got three areas with a greater than 50% shot of becoming a named storm or a tropical depression within the next 168 hours or 7 days. So again, things are really picking up now out there. And again, unfortunately, one of these could be I guess we'll use the word immediate because it kind of is an immediate concern for land, and that's this area right here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we take a look at satellite imagery, looking at our infrared, and here is the storm system, again, working right here currently into the Bay of Campeche. Now, right now, it's kind of this big, broad area of storm activity, but the real center is more down here under this envelope of convective activity here. And again, the storm is getting its act together. It is definitely becoming better organized by the hour here for sure. It looks better than it did yesterday. And again, I would not be surprised to see this develop into a tropical system today. At the very least, I think we'll get a potential tropical cyclone before the day is over, so they can go ahead and start issuing that cone to give people as big of a heads up as they possibly can. So again, looking at satellite, again, it's impressive looking. I normally don't spend too long on this portion of the video because, again, it changes so quickly. But again, just know we do have a strengthening invest in the Gulf of Mexico with future likelihood to bring impacts to the United States, and showing that to you here. Spaghetti models here, the latest. The good news is we're feeling pretty confident about the track of this system. A lot of the times, the track can be kind of difficult to iron out here. If anything, I think the intensity of this storm is going to be more difficult to forecast than the eventual track. But the latest spaghetti models here do a pretty good job, I think, of kind of showing the general idea of where this is going to go. Likely a landfall somewhere into eastern Texas, we'll say from Houston over through the Louisiana coastline is that most likely area for landfall right now. Now, if you're watching in Mississippi, Alabama, do not completely let your guard down, but just given kind of the topography, or excuse me, I guess the geography of how Louisiana is shaped, this storm would have to take a bit of a weird track to kind of miss a landfall in Louisiana and hit those other areas. So again, I think Louisiana and kind of extreme eastern Texas from Houston, we'll say, all the way through, we'll say Mobile and Biloxi, that area is going to be the most likely place for a direct landfall. But remember, the center of the storm is not the only place that's going to see impacts. We will see impacts well out from the center here as this moves inland as well. And you'll notice these tracks take this pretty far inland up through the Memphis area, the Nashville area eventually, where we could be dealing with a flooding threat. And I'm also concerned about an inland severe weather threat. And I'll show you why here in a moment. But let's take a look at the latest models for intensity with this storm. And I really don't like using these often because I think, well, when I say I think, I can tell you just statistically speaking, intensity is such a tough thing to forecast with hurricanes. They're such fragile beasts that little things that change have big ramifications on down the road. But I think right now this is kind of a safe map to show because I think it does a good job of showing the general range we think this system will get to. Most of these members keep this in tropical storm strength, but you'll notice some of them do get this up into Category 1 strength and even borderline Category 2 strength. And I think that's probably a relatively safe bet right now. Again, this has from now until sometime Wednesday or Thursday likely to strengthen and take advantage of its environment here and try to, give all it's got to, get to whatever peak intensity it can. So that's a good amount of time. But the good news is I do think we have a couple of limiting factors on that intensity, especially up to landfall. I think this may be one of those storms that gets really strong, or I say really strong. It could get up to hurricane status for sure. And then I think as it approaches land, conditions will become less favorable for the system to continue to strengthen. So that is hopefully what will happen. Hopefully this is a weakening system on landfall, but again, not completely guaranteed. All right, let's take a look here at some model guidance. We'll start with the big ones. We'll start with our GFS model, which has done a pretty good job with the storm system. Now, I think the GFS is a relatively good ceiling for the storm. We'll take a look at it. And I think this is, I don't want to say worst case scenario because, anything is possible, but I think this is definitely in the upper range of intensity forecast. So we'll get this going. GFS, again, slowly develops that area of low pressure, and we've got a storm by overnight tonight into tomorrow here into the Bay of Campeche. Millibars, right around 1,000, a little bit over probably. But throughout the day tomorrow, oops, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button going back in time. But throughout the day tomorrow, the storm continues to organize, continues to strengthen, moves up through the Gulf of Mexico. By the time we're getting into Tuesday afternoon, still dealing with just a tropical storm as the storm slowly continues to get its act together here just off the coast of Mexico and up towards the Gulf Coast of Texas. So, looking at that, again, a strengthening system, one that is trying to get its act together here, and eventually really does. By the time we get into Wednesday afternoon here, you'll notice that we do have a hurricane at this point, really just off the coast of Texas and continuing to strengthen. So again, between now and Wednesday, we'll follow the track here, just kind of oozes up the coast of Mexico here, up through the coast of Texas, and then really begins to take off intensity-wise Tuesday into Wednesday as that core really gets its act together. It's taking advantage of very warm ocean temperatures here, relatively moist air, and for a time being at least, a favorable upper wind environment. Now after that, Again, the GFS continues to strengthen it near hurricane status, or excuse me, near major hurricane status, I should say. This is probably about a Category 2, Category 3 storm at this intensity. But notice right up before landfall, we get a millibar drop, or I guess a millibar gain, we'll say, from 972 millibars up to about 980. And again, I think that's going to be the case here. I think right in this region, as the storm is kind of crawling up the coastline of Texas, and again, we'll see how far offshore it is. But I think during that period, the storm will really strengthen. But I really do think up upon final approach for landfall here, likely a storm that is probably hit max intensity over the water and then slowly weakening due to some wind shear and dry air as it moves likely somewhere into the Louisiana coastline as a hurricane or tropical storm, and then moves inland up the Mississippi River Valley into this week. Now, that's the GFS model. Let's take a look at the European. Very similar to the GFS time-wise and track-wise, just takes a little bit longer to get its act together. So this is Monday afternoon. You'll notice low pressure kind of beginning to develop there into the Bay of Campeche, and then eventually finally kind of closing off once it gets up near Brownsville, Texas by early Wednesday morning. So main difference between the two models is how long does it take the storm to get its act together. GFS gets it going much quicker. European is a bit delayed, and because of that, we see intensity differences. But a similar track here. Again, the European holding on to tropical storm strength as it rides up the coast of Texas, scraping Galveston Bay there, and then eventually landfall into, again, Louisiana by Thursday morning here as a tropical storm, and then much like the GFS, again, moves up the Mississippi River Valley. So two similar but different forecast here by the models. And again, it brings up the question, when does the storm develop? Because obviously that's going to be a big deal for forecasting its intensity. And personally, if I had to go off of one of the two, I think the GFS is probably a little more correct. Just looking at the storm on satellite this morning and looking at climatology and kind of how these systems generally go. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see a tropical system as early as today, but probably tomorrow by the latest. So again, that's a good 48 hours ahead of what the European shows. And thus, that's why the European is a little bit weaker. But track-wise, again, very similar for both models here. All right, I'll show you a hurricane model as well. This is the HAFS A model. Again, I think doing a pretty good job here. Develops a storm in the Gulf of Mexico. This is Monday afternoon and into Monday evening. You'll notice, again, I know it doesn't look very impressive here, just kind of the way the model outputs it, but 1,004 millibar tropical system, tropical storm probably at that point. Again, and moving up the coast of Mexico and eventually through the southern coast of Texas. Now, I say up the coast, it's offshore, but there definitely would be some impacts with those outer bands kind of hitting onshore regions. And again, strengthens the storm much like the GFS towards hurricane status. Again, borderline tropical storm to Category 1 hurricane here. This is on Wednesday evening, approaching the coast of Louisiana, and then landfall likely as a Category 1 hurricane here into Thursday morning, and then again moves up into the Mississippi River Valley. So all the models are kind of, again, I think giving us a good range of what we can expect. And I'll show you one more. I'll show you the Icon here, which has done a really good job with this storm system. And weirdly enough, the Icon is kind of just doing good in this part of the world. It did great with Beryl earlier this hurricane season. I think it's doing good with this one as well. And again, all kind of in the same part of the world here. So Icon again develops this. We've got a tropical storm by tomorrow morning and afternoon, strengthens it, moves it up into the Gulf of Mexico, gets up near hurricane status, and then eventually makes landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border as a very strong tropical storm or weak Category 1 hurricane. Quicker on the Icon. This is more Wednesday afternoon and evening than Thursday. So again, even sooner than some of the other models. So again, things moving relatively quick here, and that's it's I don't want to say snuck up on us because we've been watching this area for a while now, but it's definitely getting closer to potential impact time. So again, just to kind of summarize all of that, I think the models are doing a good job of giving us a track. Again, I think extreme East Texas through Louisiana is the most likely area for a landfall. Intensity-wise is the tougher forecast, but I think anywhere from a mid-grade tropical storm up to potentially a Category 2 hurricane are going to be the most likely scenarios at landfall. If I had to pick one, I would say probably a weak Category 1 hurricane right now would be my forecast, but obviously we'll see what the NHC says when they do give this a cone eventually, potentially by this evening. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see a potential tropical cyclone. All right, Let's talk about ingredients. How favorable is it for this system to form? Again, sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico are not a problem at all. It's really off the charts here in terms of ocean heat content, and will be more than enough to support a developing tropical system. Now, what about dry air? That's been something we've been fighting a little bit this year. Well, not so much with the storm in the early stages, and it's going to be the same thing for wind shear. Let me go ahead and show you right now. So this is dry air for up through Monday evening. This is wind shear through Monday evening and into overnight into Tuesday. And you'll notice here, both are very favorable. If you look at the moisture content, a lot of green around this system, indicating plenty of moisture to fire up some thunderstorm activity and deepen that low pressure. Wind shear wise, also relatively favorable. Look at how the wind pattern is here above the storm. A lot of divergence around the storm. What that creates here is plenty of convergence at the surface. Whenever you get wind that separates above you, you're going to have to fill it in, and that's by wind that hits each other at the surface, which is very favorable for a deepening low pressure system. So now through about Tuesday, I think this storm's got about as good of an environment as it can ask for, but it's after that things get a little bit more hostile. Here we go. This is getting up into Wednesday afternoon as the storm is approaching Louisiana and Texas. And notice all of this dry air from this beautiful fall weather we've been having is to the north of the storm and likely is going to try to ingest its way into the storm here on the backside up to landfall. So that'll probably lopside the storm a little bit. It'll help cap intensity some and maybe even weaken it a little bit, again, as this approaches the coast of Louisiana. And then there we go. The problem with this, though, is you're thinking, well, this is good. It's going to weaken it. And yes, definitely good news for you folks at the coast. And it'll probably even help bring rainfall numbers down a little. But this could really uptick a severe weather event here. Oftentimes when we get dry air ingesting into these tropical cyclones as they move inland, that's a prime recipe for tornadoes. So we'll have to watch that. Would not be surprised to see a localized tornado outbreak out of this potentially after landfall later this week. The ingredients are definitely there for it as it moves inland. And again, just look at all of that dry air funneling into the system. So again, that is definitely one limiting factor. That'll help keep things, I think, simmer down a little bit. What about wind shear? If we look at the upper levels of the atmosphere here, this is way up at the heights of the jet stream. The jet stream is absolutely roaring here over the southern United States here as the storm approaches. So again, in the Gulf of Mexico, it's got pretty good conditions here for development wind shear wise. It should help keep the storm stacked. But I think on approach, sorry if I don't smack my microphone, on approach to the United States as the storm is fighting dry air. I think it's also going to fight some wind shear here that might also lopside it. So I think this could be one of those storms that's lopsided pretty heavily onto the western side here. So if you're watching in Mississippi, Alabama, New Orleans, and you're saying, well, most of these tracks were to the east of us, or excuse me, let me rephrase all of that. It's going to be an east-sided storm. I think I said that. So if the storm is tracking to the west of you, sorry, directions and vectors are very difficult sometimes, that could definitely lead to, problems for you folks on the east side of the storm. So again, if this makes landfall right into the Texas-Louisiana border, then most of Louisiana is going to get the worst of the weather probably just due to that lopsided nature of the storm. So that is the latest on that system, but also not the end of it here. Again, I think the main threat right now that we can hone in on is excessive rainfall. So if we take a look at this map, 3 days out, excessive rainfall, you'll notice definitely growing the chances for that here through the Gulf Coast states, specifically Texas and Louisiana. And after that, I would expect excessive rainfall conditions to continue even further inland. And here's why. Look at some of these rainfall totals. And actually, let me do this map first. This one is what I want to start with. Again, a lot of rain possible, potentially half a foot of rain through the Gulf Coast of Texas up through wherever this makes landfall. Again, likely in Louisiana right now, at least. And then up the Mississippi River Valley. This will be more than enough to cause flooding. And again, we've already seen a ton of rain in this part of the country recently. And this is only going to exacerbate that concern. So definitely concerned about flooding, concerned about an inland tornado threat, as I mentioned. And again, even an inland flooding threat. And I'll also add, if this is a strong storm, if this is a hurricane, we're going to see some storm surge concerns. We're going to see some wind concerns. It's just a little too soon to really hone in on that. But I think tomorrow, and especially by Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll really dive in on that storm surge and wind threat for you. But again, right now, just want to stick to the rainfall forecast. So again, a lot of rain, inland tornado threat, feeling very confident in those. Just exactly how strong the wind will be and how strong the surge will be is another question. All right. I know we're going quick here, but I don't want to take up too much time here. And again, there's a lot to discuss. So let's kind of move this out now into the main development region. That is what will likely be Francine. Let me see if I can do our alphabet here. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the G and H storm likely will come, I think, out here in the main development region. At least the G storm. The H storm we'll see. But again, just to highlight a couple areas, here is our Invest. This one is actually designated Invest 92L, and then behind it, an area to watch. Both of these with the chance to develop. And again, this first one, most likely one to develop and definitely starting to get its act together here this Sunday. And again, could develop as soon as the next 48 hours. But I think likely early this week will be a more likely time frame for development. Now, a future track for this, again, we'll see. The models, again, have been a little bit more kind of all over the place, but the spaghetti models, I think, are doing a better job here of generally showing this will work towards the Western Atlantic in general. So again, these are the Antilles here. You'll notice most of these tracks keep it north of there, and I think that's pretty likely. I think this, should track in the general direction north of the islands, but again, this is still a week out is how far these go, and again, they're just now reaching any sort of land at that point. So it's just too soon, unfortunately, to really know without a form center of circulation. Also, the steering currents out here are relatively weak right now, not super strong. So this isn't a clear-cut path. I know this looks like relatively good confidence, and it is, and hopefully that confidence continues, but just know we're going to have a ways to go with tracking this one. But unfortunately, intensity-wise, again, some of our models are really kind of getting up here into the upper echelon with this one. Really tries to develop that center of circulation, spin it up quickly here, and move it up through the, again, higher levels here. Again, some of them, though, don't even develop it at all, so that is also a possibility. We'll just have to kind of wait and see with this one, but not really much else I can show you there besides some ensembles, which I will. Again, though, you'll notice here, these are the European ensembles. A lot of them do develop this, but also by 10 days out from now, a lot of them are curving this northward. But again, 10 days from now, this still is kind of far out from land. So don't really want to spend too much more time on that one. Just know we've got some time and we're going to watch it. But the bigger concern right now is definitely that storm in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, let's take a look at what's happening right now over the continental United States and what is to come here over the next little bit. Again, the big story has been this big time cold front that has worked on through for a lot of folks. Look at this kind of, very occluded low pressure system at this point and has wrapped all of this cool and dry air very far south here. Even into portions of the Gulf of Mexico. So Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, up into the Carolinas. This front has worked on through for you. Unfortunately, it hasn't completely worked on through portions of the Outer Banks, coastal South Carolina, coastal Georgia, and Florida, where it is still quite muggy and we are seeing some shower activity. But most of us, again, have gotten in on that nicer weather. But you'll notice here, again, some showers and storms here through the Florida Panhandle, coastal Georgia, and South Carolina, and even into the Florida Peninsula as well, which again, this has felt like such a rainy summer, or at least end of summer and starting to fall for you folks down that way. Definitely let me know how much rain you've picked up for sure down in that neck of the woods. Now, outside of there, we do have the, I don't want to say concern per se, but we do have some lake effect precipitation ongoing. You'll even notice this up into upstate New York here. We've got some pretty good lake effect, and I think that'll be a common theme throughout the day today and even through the coming days. Again, we're getting towards lake effect season. This is a good reminder of it. And you'll notice again that seeing some of those showers kind of working on through. In fact, even a pretty good setup for some water spouts. So cannot rule out one or two of those may try to work on shore. But again, if you're out there up into the Great Lakes region and you're a water spout fan, this is a pretty good setup for it. So definitely keep an eye out for that. All right, just want to show the dew point map here. Again, look at how nice it is out there. That cold front has continued to sag southward. It has made things really nice for the Ohio River Valley, the Midwest, or really honestly the entire lower 48 outside of the immediate Gulf Coast and portions of, again, the Outer Banks and coastal South Carolina and Georgia. But outside of there, again, just a beautiful start to this weekend here in September and a great start to the second week. And again, couldn't come at a better time here as football is really getting going. So that's the latest on that. I'll quickly show you model guidance guidance for the next 48 hours. Again, it's going to be rainy through southern South Carolina, Georgia, much of Florida, and some lake effect precipitation up into the Great Lakes as well. This is this afternoon. You'll notice all of that rain kind of working through those regions. Outside of there, though, it's going to be nice. It's going to be beautiful, and we continue to work all of that on through. Again, this is even through Monday afternoon. More lake effect precipitation up into New York. Again, mainly rain here. Don't rule out maybe a couple of grapple pellets or something like that. Can't be completely ruled out here just due to the instability and cold air aloft. But again, mainly a rain event there. And again, it's going to be raining through Florida as well through that same time frame. Now, moving this ahead into time, and again, I know we're going quick here, unfortunately. I've kind of got a schedule to keep on today. But here comes the next couple of days. Again, this is that big bowling ball trough that has brought that cold air, working on through the northeast, bringing that lake effect, almost said lake effect snow, that lake effect precipitation through the coming days. Will continue to do so. After that, though, getting into early this week, things turn very zonal. And what I mean by that is all of these isobars kind of flatten out here, and we turn to more of a geostrophic flow. Compared to a meridional flow, just meaning things are going to average out a little bit. It's going to be less cold. It's going to be less warm. It's just going to be more kind of what you would expect this time of year. And that should get us through the middle of this week. Now, what's next? Well, obviously, whatever happens in the Gulf will be a big question mark. This is Wednesday afternoon, so it's probably about right here at this point. Again, moving inland. Also, by Wednesday afternoon, though, our models are picking up on a pretty big trough here moving through the Pacific Northwest. That could get things active and eventually could bring some more low pressure to form through the coming week. And then, again, whatever happens in the Gulf will be a pretty big deal for the forecast as well. What I can tell you, though, temperature-wise, is it's going to be a great end of the weekend. Again, below average temperatures east of the Mississippi, warmer out west, stays that way, but slowly moderates throughout the week across the country here. In fact, we'll probably even be back above average. This is Thursday afternoon, getting back to warmer than average temperatures for most of us, I think, through the Great Lakes, the Ohio River Valley, the Northeast, and the Northern Great Plains, although cooler out west as, again, another trough may try to work on through, and potentially cooler in the Southeast due to some remnants of that tropical low, or what would be Francine at the time. And just to show this to you, again, this is Wednesday into Thursday. Here's that tropical mess bringing precipitation through much of the southeast, and also that trough bringing some low pressure trying to exit out of the Rockies. That could also bring some active weather. Again, this is through the end of this week. Just to show it to you really quickly here, could stay active in the weather department. So again, I know we kind of sped things up there at the end. I apologize about that. But again, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely do so. Like the video if you like it. Comment, let me know where you're watching from. And again, have a great rest of your day. Get out there and enjoy it. And I'll see you all next time.